There we are. So once more, to those of you joining the session today, thank you very much for coming along to this EQE training seminar, the second in our EQE preparation seminar series. Today, we're going to be dealing with preparing for papers A and B. So if you joined us yesterday, you'll have had a whistle-stop tour through the preparations for the European qualifying exams. We covered the changes to the exams. So what's happening to papers A, B, C, and D? What are the new papers that are coming online starting this next cycle in 2025 with the foundation paper? Then we'll see M1 and M2 in 2026, M3 and M4 in 2027, 5, 6, 7, that's right. As we said yesterday, we've given you an overview of what you need to do to pass the papers, but very high level. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through what you need to know in order to prepare for papers A and B. Now, my name is Guy Warner. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. I am the co-founder of EQE Training. Myself and Ian Russell set this organization up during the COVID pandemic, when the EQE exams were disrupted very suddenly. And we've been tutors for the EQEs for a long time. And EQE training came about because we wanted to help the profession. And so we set up a few seminar series in order to sort of help people get through this upset and sort of, regain the preparation that they lost for the exams. But actually, we've been tutors for a long time. We always wanted to set up a way of doing it ourselves, and EQE training is the manifestation of that. So it's great because it allows us to deliver training to the European patent attorney profession. It helps us be part of your journey to becoming a qualified patent attorney. And it also allows us to do things like this for the whole community. So hopefully you get value out of this. Now, what I'm going to do today is inevitably driven by the tutorials and the learning program that we have for papers A and B. So full disclosure, what I'm talking about today is kind of a tiny subset of what we teach on our learning programs. And I appreciate you being here. I'll be referring back to the learning that we give as part of our sessions. If you want to find out more about what we do in our learning program, I'll talk about that at the end, and it hopefully gives you a sense of what we do. And if you want to join us, we would love to have you and love to help you pass papers A and B as part of your journey to these exams. So the expectation is the people on this call will be sitting papers A and B either in 2025 or 2026, because those are your last two opportunities to do so. And our intention is that everybody who takes the tutorials with us has the best possible chance of passing. So there's a lot to cover today. The great thing is that this session is indeed being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it back again. We'll post it onto our website and we'll announce on LinkedIn when those recordings are available. But let's get started. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to do a recap of what I spoke about yesterday very quickly about papers A and B. And then I'm going to do a deep dive into a deeper dive. I mean, it's impossible to do justice to this in the hour that we have together, but I'm going to talk to you about the most important parts of the paper A and paper B methodology that we teach, and then a suggested schedule that'll allow you to kind of train up to sort of match fitness for the exams that take place in March next year. So if you joined me yesterday, you'll have heard me talk about the next few slides, but they bear repeating. So papers A and B are the drafting paper and the amendment paper. So for paper A, the purpose is to assess whether you as a candidate can draft the claims and an introductory part of a patent application that would meet the requirements of the European Patent Convention. In the exam, you'll receive a letter from the client who wants you to get a patent for them and some prior art. So they'll describe their invention, they'll describe the prior art. What you need to do is draft an independent claim or claims, depending on which categories are available to you, which offer the broadest possible protection that meet the requirements of the European Patent Convention. In particularly, they need to be novel and inventive. So independent claims that meet the requirements of the EPC. And you'll be expected to also draft a set of dependent claims that hang off those independent claims. And you need to draft an introduction that provides support for the claims you've written and talks about the advantage of the invention that you're claiming. That's paper A. Paper B is slightly different. It's the amendment paper, the reply paper as it's referred to. In this, you're tested on your ability to reply to an official communication from the EPO. You'll be provided with that official communication from the EPO. That will contain objections to an application that's been filed and a set of prior art. So you'll get the application that's been filed, the objections from the EPO, the prior art that causes those objections. You'll also get the letter from the client and a draft set of claims from the client, and that indicates what they want you to seek protection for when you amend it. In order to pass this exam, you're expected to respond to all the points raised in the official communication, and your response must be in the form of a letter to the EPO. So you reply to the EPO with claims amended to meet the requirements of the EPC. Not only do you have to provide the amended claims, in your letter you have to provide the basis for all those amendments, the basis, so you need to identify the amendments and provide basis in the application as filed, and additional explanations as necessary. And you need to set out your arguments for the patentability of the claims. You need to deal with the objections of the examiner. So there'll be clarity, there'll also be novelty and inventive step that you need to explain and argue for. I'll go into detail on how you can do that through the course of this presentation. Of course, you need a certain number of marks to pass. You need 50 or more. And as you probably know already, if you get fewer than 45, then that unfortunately would be a fail. But between 45 and fewer than 50 is a compensable fail. And so if you get higher marks in the paper, you should be okay. What we say to all our candidates that we train is papers A and B, fingers crossed, you should be getting more than 55 marks. And indeed, one of the things we say to our candidates on training package 3, which you find out about if you look at our website, but those of you that come with us on the full learning program and have all your papers marked, if you don't get that 55 or more, then actually we'll mark your paper for you and find out where those marks were specifically lost, so you don't make those mistakes next time round. But yeah, it should be a very passable paper if you do the right preparation, which we'll talk about today. So I think this is the last slide I'm going to repeat from yesterday, but this is the grade cliff, and it's particularly important for these two papers because in these papers you are expected to draft a claim that offers the broadest scope of protection, claims that offers the broadest scope of protection for your client, which means they need to get increasingly broad. The broader your claims are, the more marks you will achieve for those claims. However, if your claims are too broad, then they read onto the prior art, you're not novel, and you fall off the grade cliff. So we teach you during the course of our learning program how to recognize when you are close to the grade cliff and take the appropriate action in order to make sure that you are definitely novel and you are able to sort of avoid falling off that cliff. So there we go. That's the structure of the exams in a nutshell. I am now going to take you on a whistle-stop tour through what you need to do in order to prepare. And it's only prepare because, of course, you need to do a ton of work for all these exams in order to get yourself in a passing position. But this is kind of the structure of your preparations for these two exams, paper A and paper B. So what's expected for paper A? To reiterate, doesn't matter if I repeat myself here because you need to know this in order to pass the exam. You need to draft independent claim or claims, more than one category, that offers the broadest scope of protection and will succeed before the EPO. This is not like real life. You do not get the opportunity to try something and see if it works. It has to be novel and inventive so it succeeds for the EPO. You're also expected to draft a number of dependent claims. To your independent claims, it says reasonable number. It, of course, means no more than 15 claims to avoid claims fees. You are also expected to draft an introduction that provides the support and the rationale for your independent claims. There is the option to write a supplementary note to the examiner as well, but that won't be the difference between passing and failing. You're expected to have one single application with a set of unified claims, and you need to proceed in line with the wishes of your client as described in their letter, and just accept the facts as they're given to you in the paper. Don't bring any of your own specialist knowledge in. As you will see over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, the essence of paper A is to figure out what the invention is from your client's idea, subtract the prior art, and then if you can find the novel subject matter that's left, and if that novel subject matter is associated with an advantage, then that will be the basis of your independent claims. It sounds very simple. In principle, it is, but you need to practice, practice, practice in order to make sure you get it right. So, of course, your claims need to be novel over the prior art, have a strong inventive step argument, a conceptual argument. You won't need to make the argument in this paper, and it needs to cover all of the client's novel embodiments. And it needs to include all the essential features, but none of the non-essential features. So it mustn't be unduly limited. Marks arise in this paper as follows. I've not added 2024 onto this slide, but if you join us for the sessions, our learning program, then of course it will be on there. But as you can see, you get big marks for your independent claims. If you can, in some years, well, in all these previous years, if you got the maximum number of marks for your independent claims, you would have passed. In fact, in some years, they were worth up to 80 marks. So you could have got almost half marks for your independent claims and still passed. So you can see the importance of getting your independent claims right. And you'll see through the course of this session today how we sort of focus on that. So what methodology do we teach for this exam paper? Well, it's broken down into 3 sections. You need to extract the information from the paper. You need to have the approaches and techniques necessary to read the material in the time available and identify and extract the important information that's provided to you in the paper, and use the appropriate visualization techniques to understand what that invention is. And as you go through it, you need to spot the difficulties, the sort of the red flags that you need to pick up in order to make sure you don't get into trouble in this paper. Again, that's something that we'll teach in great detail when we go through the Sorry, thank you very much for your questions during the course of this presentation. I have been sharing my screen, but it appears not to be working. Can I just double check you are able to now see those slides? So in the Q&A, if you can just write a question that indicates whether or not. Fantastic, thank you. I do apologize for that. Let me just very quickly go through the previous slides. There's not much that you need to know, but I am conscious now that we're recording it, so we want the people who are on the recording to be able to see the slides. So I'm just going to quickly walk through them so you can pause the recording and see what we were talking about. So this is the summary of the tutorial. This is the regs on what you need to do for passing paper A and passing paper B. This is the slide that talks to you about the marks that you need to get in order to pass. This is the slide that talks about the grade cliff. So this is the marks increasing in the increasing scope of your claim, the marks go up. But if you fail on novelty, if you read onto the prior art, then you fall off the grade cliff. And as I said, we teach the techniques that you need in order to ascertain where you are on the on this slope, and you can avoid the grade cliff. We then stepped into the methodology of paper A, the expectations of paper A about drafting independent claims in the introduction, what you need to do, responding to the wishes of your client. This is a slide on the essence of paper A. And then we said the claims must be novel, have strong inventive step, cover the embodiments, include all the necessary features and not be unduly limited whilst being clear and supported. And you should only have 1 claim per category. This is the slide that talks about the allocation of marks. As we said, in previous years, you got up to 80 marks for the independent claims. Even 2023 had 50, so you can pass. You get a very long way to passing this exam just on the basis of your independent claims. And here we are. This is the methodology that we teach. So extract, which is about understanding how to read the information in the time that's available using the appropriate visualization techniques in order to understand and extract the information and spot and overcome those difficult issues. Having extracted that information, you then need to be able to subtract the prior art that you're presented with So you need to learn the techniques and the approaches for reading and classifying and categorizing the prior art, and then using those visualization tools from the extraction step to kind of subtract that information, see what's left in terms of what you can, subject matter you can claim, and also recognize where you're being presented with uncertainty and ambiguity through these papers. I will make it sound straightforward whenever I talk about it in these kind of forums. When you actually look at the past papers with us, as we do, we go through several past papers, as I'll talk about. That's when you find out that actually it's not that straightforward, and you need to learn these techniques to overcome the tricky parts of it. And then you won't get any marks for extracting and subtracting. What you actually need to do is execute your answer. You need to carry out the answer and put it into the system that you're using in the exam, turn your analytics into marks, so you can draft your full set of independent claims that are as broad as possible without falling off that grade cliff. Draft your independent claims, draft your introduction, be in a position to get all the available marks that you can. So in order to do that, we teach a 10-step methodology. So how to read the paper. We actually teach you how to read it in the context of these exams. You don't need to be taught how to read, but you need to be able to be taught how to read and extract the information that's given to you in the exam. I'll give you some examples of that. Then you need to understand how to analyze the prior art and how to subtract that from the invention you've extracted, and then carry out the remaining 5 steps in order to make sure that you can get those marks. So how do you identify what subject matter you need to claim? How do you actually write the independent claims and all of the checks that you need to perform in order to make sure you do that properly? How do you then get all of that right? That is so important, because it's, as I say, it's worth in previous years at least 50% of the paper. How do you make sure that's absolutely as good as it can possibly be? There's scores of checks that you need to carry out as you're drafting and checking your independent claims. You get that bit right, then you move to drafting the dependent claims, and then you check everything again. And then you draft the introduction, and then you should be in a position to finish writing this paper. Sounds simple. It is, in principle, it is. But the more you practice this methodology, the easier it gets. And then step 10 will be drafting the supplementary note if indeed that's needed. But as I mentioned, it's not always needed. Right. This, for you guys on the webinar today, is the same example that we use in our learning program. So we actually have developed a nice, this is like level 0 of understanding these exams, but it's nice and simple because it sort of sets out the scenario that you'll face in the exams. So here is a version of the client's letter. So imagine this is a very simple version of paper A. So it says, our company makes bicycles and parts for bicycles. Bicycles take a lot of energy to use and they don't go very fast. Bicycle wheels must comprise a tire, a rim, and a plurality of spokes. Bicycle wheels are very specific and are not the same as other wheels, for example, car wheels. We have developed a new bicycle wheel with a special tire. The tire comprises a rubber called Rub Ace. Types of Rub Ace include, but are not limited to, Rub Ace 1, Rub Acer, and Rub Good, and these are made by various manufacturers already. We have done tests on bicycles fitted with wheels having tyres made from Rub Ace 1, Rub Acer, and Rub Good. They all work really well with no compatibility issues. The bicycles with Rub Ace 1 and Rub Good went 15% faster and with 30% more efficiency. The bicycles with Rub Acer went 30% faster and with 60% more efficiency. We also did a test using the exact same wheel, but the tyre was made from another type of rubber called Rubbish, and it performed worse than standard bike tyres. There was actually lower speed and efficiency. We think that protecting the wheel is important, but we're also worried other bicycle manufacturers might use our wheel on their bicycles. Europe is important. I'm going on holiday now. Don't call me. That, in a microcosm, is the sort of thing that you'll be presented with for paper A. That last sentence is because they always say, file a European application. I cannot be reached anymore. Don't ask me any more questions. That is the setup for the exam. You then have to proceed on with the information that you've been given. So what do you do? Well, the first thing is to read it and carry out your preliminary analysis. We tell all of our candidates that the first time you read something is the most important time. So you need a technique to read it. This is just one of several slides that we use. So you're asking yourself these sorts of questions. What's the client develop? What's their business? How are they going to make money? What technical advantages are there from the invention? What sort of things should I be thinking about claiming? What's the technical difference between the inventions that I've been given and the prior art they might give me? Are there any issues with the prior art? We'll come to that in a moment. How do you do that? Well, we teach a variety of approaches, and the one that we teach at the moment is called the digital scrap sheet because you can do this within the electronic examination system within WiseFlow. So what we've done here is we've marked up, and we teach how to get to this stage and what all these abbreviations mean. But basically, you've got the letter here on the right, top right of your screen. This is a summary of all that same information. So the client CB, the client's business, they make bicycles and parts for bicycles. The problem that they want to solve is that bikes take a lot of energy and don't go very fast. They say bicycle wheels must comprise a tire and a rim and a plurality of spokes. Is that an essential element? Probably. Is it claim language that you need to use? Is it an object that needs to be claimed? They are very specific and are not the same as other wheels, for example, car wheels. Is there some other information that you need to be aware of? Other information, OI. They say they've developed a new bicycle wheel with a tire comprising rubber called Rubace. When it says that words like comprising, mark that up. CL, claim language. It's the sort of thing that can be lifted and put into the claims. Called Rubace. Is this an object that I need to be claiming in my claims? S, this is a solution. They've done something. They've developed it. They also say Rubace includes Rubace 1, Rubacer, and Rub Good. So you've got like preferred features of the Rubace rubber because it can be Rubace is sort of a broad term, and then some specific examples will be available as well. Yes, the recording will be made available after the session. Thank you for asking. Made by various manufacturers already, so that's an acknowledgement of what's already in the prior art. They say that the proof of the solution, proof of S, proof of solution, tests on bikes fitted with the tire made from Rubace, Rubacer, and Rub Good were carried out. So you've now got 3 embodiments, embodiment 1, embodiment 2, and embodiment 3 that they're actually talking about. They said that there was no compatibility issue between any of these and putting them on tires. That's other information. And then they give you some quantitative data. They tell you that Rubace 1 and Rub Good were 15% faster with 30% more efficiency. Rubacer was 30% faster and 6% more efficiency. And Rubace had no speed or efficacy improvement. So therefore, Rubace sounds like it's an essential element of the invention because anything else doesn't work. And then protecting the wheel and the wheel on bicycles, you're being given some instructions from your client as well, CI, client's instructions. So that's just an approach. You can develop your own approaches, but that's the one that we teach. Another way of doing it is you can visualize it. So in this case, you could use a flow diagram. So they tell you that bicycles comprise bicycle wheels, which have a tire, a rim, and spokes. They feed into the bicycle wheels. The tires are made of rubber. The rubber can be Rubace, and Rubace can be Rubace 1, Rubacer, and Rub Good. They tell you about data and solutions that are represented here. They tell you that rubbish doesn't work. They tell you that bicycles and bicycle wheels can be combined together to make a bicycle plus wheels. You can do another type of visualization. This is the one that we teach as well. So we teach all of this. So this is the feature table. You can see here that you categorized all the information that you were given in the paper. So you're told about a bike wheel that has a hub, spokes, and tire. Then you're told that the tire is made of rubber. You're told the tire rubber is Rubace. You're told that the Rubace can be Rubace 1, Rub Good, or Rubacer. You're told about the problem that they're solving and that the solution appears to be tire rubber with Rubace. And this feature table also is set up for you to record further information as you go through the process, which I'll talk about. So that's what you do. That's the sort of step 1 extraction in a nutshell. There's much more to it than that, but that's in terms of preparation for these exams, that's what you need to be prepared to do. Then you need to subtract the prior art. So let's just see what prior art we have in this example. So prior art number 1, is an advert from 2001, and it says new Rub Ace, available as Rub Ace 1, Rub Ace, and Rub Good. Try this rubber, it's great when used for matting. It doesn't even mark the floor. Prior art number 2, we'll talk about claiming a new car tyre and a car wheel with a new tyre that addresses the problem of reducing punctures. We claim and disclose car wheels with tyres made from Rub Acer that were found to be less prone to punctures with no impact on speed or efficiency. And then prior art number 3 is an article from a bike magazine. You can analyze that. So look, you can pull out that they're telling you about the species, sorry, that they're telling you about Rub Acer. So that, and it's showing you that they're talking about Rub Ace and the species as a species and the genus of Rub Ace 1, Rub Acer, and Rub Good. It talks about matting, which isn't the same as bicycles. It talks about marking the floor, which isn't the same problem as the invention. In the second one, they disclose Rub Acer specifically, but that time it's in a car tire, and it doesn't talk about any impact on speed and efficiency. The final one actually talks about bicycles and it talks about efficiency and speed, but it talks about the non-working version of the rubber. So it's not Rub Ace 1, Rub Acer, or Rub Good, and it talks about using water, not air. And it doesn't appear to have, although it has improvements on efficiency, it's not as good as the one that we had before. But just looking at that, you can start to indicate that maybe prior art 3 should be the closest prior art. So then you take this information, you do the subtraction. So if you're using the digital scrap sheet, prior art number 1, that's what it's disclosed. You can cross it off. Prior art number 2, that's what it discloses. You can cross it off. Prior art number 3, that's what it discloses. You can cross it off. And when you do this approach with a bit more time than we have today, you can actually see what's novel. So after you've subtracted it, what's left? And what's left is a new bicycle wheel with a tire comprising rubber called Rub Ace. That's novel. You can do the same thing with the flow diagram. Let's excise the prior art of number 1, prior art number 2, prior art number 3. What are you left with? A bicycle wheel with a tire comprising Rub Ace rubber. You can use the feature table in the same way. So each column, you describe the piece of prior art. What's left? You can find out that, as you saw before, we had a row for novelty. You can see that embodiments 1 to 3 are all novel over prior art 1, prior art 2, and prior art 3. So you're now in a position where you can identify the subject matter that you want to claim. And these are the steps that you should carry out in order to sort of evaluate the information you've been given and arrive at the subject matter to claim. So for example, at this stage, we can move to drafting our independent claims. So you might write, bike wheels comprising a tire made of rubber, wherein the rubber is Rub Ace 1, Rub Acer, Rub Good, or a combination thereof. But we teach the relentless analysis of every word that you use, because this is how you get marks in these papers. So is this right? No, it's not. Because why are you saying bike? It should be bicycle. Why are you saying wheels, plural? Because somebody making a wheel might not infringe this claim. Why does it need to comprise of just a tire? What about the hub, the spoke, the rim that we found as essential elements? Why does it say made from rubber instead of comprising, which is the language we were given in the paper? And why have you specifically spoken about each one of these 3 species? Why haven't you used the genus of Rub Ace? So actually, if you do that kind of analytics, that relentless checking of your claims, you arrive at a better, more accurate claim in this context, which is a bicycle wheel comprising a hub, a plurality of spokes, a rim, and a tire, wherein the tire comprises Rub Ace rubber. So you do that, you need to check, is your claim novel? Yes, according to our analysis. Does it have the broadest possible scope? Yes. Is it associated with an advantage? Is the prior art completely silent as the advantage of the invention? Is it quantitatively shown to be better? Is that supported by data? In every case, we can say yes to that. So that's the sort of checks you need to be making. So we're assured that that's the right claim. Ask ourselves again, is it broad enough? Does it have basis in the facts in the paper? Is it solved by the distinguishing feature relative to prior art? Is it something the client actually wants to solve? Those are the checks you perform. You can see in this example, they're all right. Have you claimed all the categories you should be claiming in your independent claims? We'll go through this in our sessions and talk about all the different claim categories. Then you do a final check. Is it clear? Is it novel? Is it inventive? Does it solve the technical problem? These are part of the template and the pro forma we give you to literally check as you go through answering your paper. Then you need to draft the dependent claims, which you don't have time to go through. And then again, more checks in order to make sure you've got every single one of the available marks for writing these. And then you draft the introduction. There's not a huge amount of marks available for it, but they're easy marks. So you just need to follow the structure of Rule 42, set out what the technical field is, what the prior art is, disclose the invention. All of this we give to our candidates in the training template that we have. So you've got it all specifically written out as a technique in order to make sure you don't miss anything during the pressure of the exams. How does this work during the exams? How do these 10 steps all work together? Well, like this. So basically, we suggest you break your time up in the exams as follows. So when you're practicing your past papers, remember this slide, give yourself that kind of time in order to answer the papers. So that initial analytics, that extract and subtract stage, that should be kind of the 90 minutes minimum. It's a long exam, 4 hours, it's plenty of time. And then the execution is the rest of the time that's available. So draft your independent claims. It can take an hour to draft them. Why does it take an hour to write something so simple? It's because of all the checks that you're performing to make sure that you've not made any mistakes with those independent claims to get the maximum marks available. Then your dependent claims, then further checks again to make sure you're in the right place one last time, draft your introduction, and then you're done. So that's the kind of schedule for paper A. A whistle-stop tour. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat. And equally, you're more than welcome to reach out to us on LinkedIn and we can pick up any of those things or join us for our learning program to hear about all of this and more in detail. We're now moving from paper A to paper B. So what do you need for paper B? As I said before, you need to know what's expected. That's the first stage of any preparation for passing an exam. So as we said, you're expected to provide a response that deals with all the points raised in the communication, an amended set of claims that are broad enough and will succeed, an accompanying letter to the EPO that identifies all the amendments and the basis for those amendments from the application that you're provided with, and an argumentation for the patentability of the amended claims. That's nice and simple, seems very straightforward. I'll be able to do this quickly. The question is, how on earth are you going to get loads of marks for this? Well, I'll explain how that happens in a moment. The other expectation, as with all the papers, well, both papers A and B and everything else really, is that you need procedures in line with the notional client's wishes, accept the facts as given, don't use your own knowledge. But in paper B and paper C, but we're teaching paper B, you must use the problem and solution approach and use our problem and solution approach because it's the best way of getting all the marks. And I'll again explain why that's important in a second. A bit like paper A, it's formulaic. That's why we're seeing changes in the exams. Over time, people have looked at paper A, looked at paper B, looked at paper C, and they've been able to develop techniques to pass them. But they are still very difficult exams. So your techniques have to be really good in order to pass them. But if you do that and you use your technique properly, you'll be able to give the examiner exactly what they want and include every single step that they're looking for. They cannot give you the marks unless you show them that you've used the information to get the marks. If we compare paper A against paper B, paper A, you've got total freedom to draft. If you've got claims where they're novel and inventive, that's probably enough. There's no expectation for you to argue no problem and solution. You just provide the claims and foreshadow them in the introduction. Paper B, you don't have freedom to draft. You're restricted to the existing application, Article 123(2). And that will apply. You must give basis for your amendments. And not only do you amend the independent claims, but of course, by definition, you've created new dependent claims. So you need to give the basis for those claims as well. You will have to argue for novelty and be way more exhaustive than you would be in normal practice. And you have to use inventive step arguments, and they must be supported by a problem solution. The legal basis for both these papers is similar, but you need additional legal knowledge, legal basis for paper B, as indicated in the white text on this slide. Right, this is important. The allocation of marks for these papers has been quite consistent over the years. Again, I've not had it in 2024, but join us and you'll see what it's like for 2024. But your amended claims are still worth 30%, 30 of this paper. So in contrast to paper A, you're not going to pass this paper just by getting good amended claims. However, if your letter to the EPO is good, then you'll be in a very strong position. Even if your claims aren't perfect, there's a lot of marks to be achieved. And look how many marks are available for the simple process of providing basis for the amendments of your claims. How can you get so many marks when you've only got 15 claims? It's because not only are you providing basis for the independent claims, you're providing basis for the new dependent claims as well. And I spoke about inventive step. Look how many marks are available for inventive step. 38 marks were available 1 year for inventive step, never less than 23 marks over the years. And that 23 was a bit of an anomaly because there were so many marks available for novelty. So recognize this in terms of your preparation. You have to prepare across the board. But when you execute your answers, getting the amendments piece and the inventive step piece right is so important. It is a far more complex paper than paper A. Not in terms of technique. The techniques we teach for A are pretty much the same as the techniques we teach for B, but we teach more for paper B as well. So not in terms of analysis, but you've got a ton of information that you need to analyze for paper B and really turn the handle on showing that you've understood the information, you've used the information, and you put that down as you execute the answer. And as I say here, you need to clearly show I understand what's been given to me, and here I am providing it to you, examiner, in my answer paper. In terms of techniques, as I said a second ago, the techniques we teach are shared between paper A and B, but paper B then demands that candidates clearly demonstrate that they understand the information that's been given and they are using that information in their papers. So in A, you get loads of marks for your independent claims and you'll be in a strong position. In paper B, you have to get lots of marks for your amendments and your inventive step, and you show the information and how you're using it. I've repeated myself a few times on this point. Don't do it deliberately because it's so important. You have to be able to use all the information from the paper, and there are places to use it in your amendments, in your novelty arguments, in your inventive step arguments. You'll see what I mean. So let's compare the methodology between papers A and papers A and B. This is the methodology for paper A. It's hardly different for paper B. You still do the same extraction of information, the same subtraction of information, but instead of drafting an independent claim, you draft an amended independent claim. Instead of drafting an introduction, you draft a letter to the EPO. The differences seem small, but as you'll see when we get to step 9 of the methodology, they are massive in terms of how you answer the paper. And why is that important? Step 6 is important because of all the marks you get for giving for your amended claims as such. But then you've got to get step 9 right, because you can only pass this paper by writing a good letter in response. So as you read the preliminary information in paper B, you need to be really attuned to some things that you might not have been attuned to in paper A. And first and foremost is, what is the closest prior art? What are the distinguishing features over the prior art? What are the effects of those differences? What can the client get protected? So that's what you must be thinking of in terms of like your destination answer. That's got to be front of your mind as you start reading and carrying out your preliminary analysis. Of course, you also need to make sure you address all the comments all the issues that are raised in the letter from the EPO as well. The other thing that's important is you need to be cognizant of filing dates as well. You're not filing a brand new application as you are in paper A. You're in a situation where you're responding to objections to an application that's already been filed, so that might come into play as well. The extraction of information isn't a million miles different from paper A. So as with paper A, you need to sort of read through a linear form of an exam, but then you need to make sure that your extraction techniques work for that exam. And as I said, you can use any one of the techniques that we use. It's a digital, start with paper. Like the fact of the matter is, the first time you do these papers, you need to be paper-based. But the sooner you can get into the electronic version, or the electronic environment, which is how you'll be sitting the exams, the better. So yeah, move from a scrap sheet of paper notes into a digital scrap sheet, or a flow diagram, or a feature table as well. So as we said before, we're kind of going to leap back into that example that we had from the paper A part, where we ended up with an independent claim. And our independent claim was a bicycle wheel comprising a hub, one or more spokes, a rim and a tire, wherein the tire comprises rub-ace rubber. So for the purposes of our seminar today, let's imagine that that was the claim that our application had. And then the client is writing to you saying, I've had this objection from the EPO and they found this prior art. What do I do? And so this is now the situation we find ourselves in with paper B. You've got your claim, and now you need to subtract the prior art. So you would have done all the same things before that you did for paper A. You do the same things in paper B, and you arrive at what you believe to be the invention, and then you need to subtract the prior art. And this is the prior art we're subtracting for this paper B scenario. And here it is. It's an advert dated 2002. Do you suffer from skid marks on your drive? First, we brought you Rubace non-marking mats. It's the same company as prior art number 1. Now we're bringing you bike wheels with the no skid mark bike tire. The no skid mark bike tires are uniquely made using Rubace or rub good rubber to allow big skids but without the marks. And they even slow the bike down to prevent accidents. So all of a sudden, you're being presented with new information. But what is it telling you? Well, the first thing you can spot is it's not related to the same problem as our invention. Our invention is efficiency and speed. This is about not marking the drive. First, we brought you Rubace. Is this the same company as D1, prior art number 1? But now they're talking not about mats, but they're talking about bike wheels. And bike wheels contain tires, which is what our invention was about. And they specifically disclose Rubace 1 or Rubgood, which we know are examples of the Rubace rubber. So immediately alarm bells start ringing. Oh no, we're not novel. What do we do? This information is concerning, but it's confusing. What do we do with it? Why are they telling us that it slows the bike down to prevent accidents? That teaches away from our invention. How do we cope with this? Well, actually, we cope with it by just following the techniques that we use in this paper. So, for example, using the feature table, because of we haven't got that long to go through stuff. So let's imagine we use the feature table. All you need to do is add this new prior art down the right-hand side, and you can see immediately, oh no, we're not novel in terms of embodiments number 1 and embodiments number 2. So embodiment number 1 is Rubace, and embodiment number 1 is Rubace 1. Embodiment number 2 is Rubgood. Embodiment number 3 is the Rubacer rubber. So we're not novel over Rubace 1 or Rubgood, but Rubacer is still novel. We can identify that from our feature table. And not only that, we can identify that this prior art is not directed to the same purpose or effect. So it hasn't changed our thoughts about the closest prior art. So is there something we can do in terms of subtracting the prior art in order to make sure we get the right claims? Yes, of course there is. We can amend the claims. So if we amend the claim to say a bicycle wheel comprising a hub or one or more spokes, a rim tire wherein the tire comprises Rubace rubber, wherein the Rubace rubber comprises Rubacer, the rubber of embodiment 3, or we can say it another way, a bicycle wheel comprising a hub, one or more spokes, a rim and a tire characterized in the tire comprises Rubacer, then we can assure ourselves that that is novel. So fast forwarding to that solution, we do our check. Is it novel? Yes, it has the broadest possible scope. It is most certainly associated with an advantage. The prior art is completely silent that the advantage is there, it's twice as efficient. And you've got quantitative data that shows it's better. And actually, the prior art is teaching you away from that as well in various different ways, which we'll come on to. So you can assure yourself that the bicycle wheel comprising a hub, one or more spokes and rim is the right form. You can write it as the sort of original wording, however, or the two-part form, it doesn't really matter. But that is the amendment that you've made. And it's really important at this step 6 that you keep track of all of that, because you need to make those amendment arguments, and I'll show you what they look like in a second. So final check at this stage. Is your technical problem the right technical problem? Is it broad enough? Does it have facts in the paper? Is it solved by the distinguishing feature? Well, all of those are a yes. And we know that the tire where it's the tire rubber is rubacer is solved by the distinguishing feature because it's double the efficiency and speed. Is it something the client actually wants to solve? Yes, it fits their business. That's the problem statement they gave us in the very first sentence of their letter. Fine. All of this gets us to a position where we know what we need to claim. So if we do a good job of writing the amended claim, if you do a perfect job of writing the amended claim, you'll get about 30 marks if it follows the previous years. But you're not going to pass. You've got to get the letter to the EPO right. You've got to provide an explanation and basis of the amendments made. You have to deal with every single amendment, no matter how trivial, and give explicit and implicit indication of the basis for those amendments. You drag in everything you possibly can from the paper to support those amendments. Difficult to do this justice. Well, it's impossible to do this justice in the time that we have today, but I'll talk about it a little bit. But when you join us for the sort of sessions that we teach, we'll go through this in really great detail, and you'll see in the papers how that actually happens in real life. You will have to argue in clarity. You'll have to reason novelty. Use everything in the paper that you can, and argue inventive step using the complete problem and solution approach. Everything in the paper that you possibly can use to support your inventive step, you should use it. And this is kind of our 20-step inventive step approach that we teach. And we'll go through that again in the sessions. So what can you write to the EPO? Well, this is the sort of language you should be using. And we actually give you a template, again, an actual template where you can use the words in order to write your letter. So you say that in this example, we say claim 1 has been amended to specify that the rubber is rubacer. Basis for this amendment can be found, and then in your paper, you'll actually have basis to point to the paragraph and the line, which says that the preferred version is rubacer. But then that's not enough. You have to go into more detail. You say, like, moreover, the skilled person could use rubacer with no impediment because, as specified, rubacer worked really well with no compatibility issue and is also exemplified in the examples. You wouldn't do this in normal life. You have to do it in paper B because it's showing that you've used the information. It doesn't stop there. I don't have a good example of how to handle clarity because there wasn't an objection to clarity, but you could say rubacer is well recognized term in the art is exemplified by prior arts 1 and 2, which are at least 10 years old. You're using that information. Novelty, you do it absolutely ruthlessly, and you just use what you had in your feature table or your visualization. What does D1 disclose? What does D2 not disclose? How is claim 1 distinguished over D1 on that basis? So you literally have to write it out specifically. What is not present listed in your feature table? Write it down in your answer. What does D2 disclose? Car wheels with tires made from rubacer. It doesn't disclose a bicycle wheel comprising a hub or one or more spokes or a rim using the language of our claim. Nor does it disclose a bicycle wheel tire, because you say car tires are not equivalent to bike tires because bicycle wheels are very specific and not the same as other wheels, because that's the language given to you in the paper. So, and then also that the tire claimed comprises rubacer rubber in the rubacer rubber. And then you say it all again. Claim 1 is therefore distinguished over D2 in that it requires those things. Do it again for D3. Do it again for D4. You are turning the handle, as I said, to get these marks. Now, this is where I wanted to get to in the time available. The inventive step argument is so important in this paper, and it runs as follows. The first thing that you have to do is detail what is the closest prior art. But look how the information is used in this inventive step argument from our simple exam answer. Look how much you can write and how many marks you can get. First thing you say is what the invention relates to. The present invention relates to bicycle wheels, specifically bicycle wheels with enhanced speed and efficiency. What's the closest prior art? D3 is the closest prior art because it deals with the same technical field of bicycle wheels. More specifically, it deals with a similar purpose, that of bicycle wheels with enhanced speed and efficiency. I am proving that's the case because you then reference it. It says in D3, we report on a new bike wheel with a tire made from a type of rubber called rubbish. It's 10% faster with 20% more efficiency. In addition, D3 discloses the bicycle wheels having many technical features in common with the subject matter of claim 1, namely hub, spoke, rim, tire, rubber. And then you can even quote the guidelines. And our template has got everything that you need in order to write this out. You don't stop there. There are 4 pieces of prior art, one of which is the closest prior art, three of which are not the closest prior art. You now need to say why each of those is not the closest prior art. So if you only focus on the prior art, you only get 25% of the available marks for closest prior art. So deal with the other ones. D1 is not considered to be the closest prior art because it's in a different field, that of rubber and mats, and does not deal with a similar purpose, specifically bicycle wheels with enhanced speed and efficiency. It deals with a different problem, namely the provision of rubber and rubber mats. D2 is not considered to be the closest prior art. It's car wheels and tires. It doesn't deal with a similar purpose, that of bicycle wheels with enhanced speed and efficiency. It deals with a different problem, puncture reduction. D4 is not considered to be the closest prior art because although it's in the same general field of bicycle wheels, it doesn't deal with a similar purpose, that of bicycle wheels with enhanced speed and efficiency. It deals with a different problem, namely the prevention of skid marks from bicycle tires. Very repetitive, but you're doing this in an electronic answer system. So you can copy and paste as much as you want, but you've got to get this information down, repeat it because the marks are available. But look, every single time you're using information that's been given to you in the exam paper that you might otherwise have overlooked. What is the difference between the closest prior art and the claim? As discussed above under novelty, the difference between the closest prior art, subject matter of claim 1 and the disclosure of D3, closest prior art, is that the bicycle wheel of claim 1 comprises a tyre that comprises rub-ace rubber, characterising that rub-ace rubber is rub-ace-er. The technical effect. This difference leads to the technical effect the efficiency speed is better than other tyres made of rub-ace rubber. And then you reference the examples. Rub-ace was 30% faster with 60% more efficiency. The other two were only 15% and 30% more efficient. Define the objective technical problem. Show that it's so then you define your objective technical problem in the appropriate way. Then you state the solution that your problem is solved by a tyre comprising rub-acer, and then you give the evidence. You quote the evidence back from the quantitative data in the paper. So that is what you need to do just for inventive step. You've not finished yet. You then say that the closest prior art alone would not solve would not render the claim obvious because it doesn't disclose the solution. It only discloses this. And look how much you can say in your commentary about this paper. We're running out of time, so I can't go into this in detail, but you can come back to it in the recording. But look how much you can write about the closest prior art alone. And then you talk about why it wouldn't work if you combine them together. So you wouldn't turn to D1 to solve the objective technical problem because that's rubber and rubber mats. But even if you did, it wouldn't work because although it mentions rub-acer, it does so in the context of rubber mats. There's no hint or suggestion that it would have any benefit for the speed or efficiency of bicycle wheels. What about combining the closest prior art with D2? Again, they wouldn't turn to D2 because it's a different problem, puncture reduction. Not even in bicycle wheels, because bicycle wheels and car wheels are different. So they wouldn't turn to D2. You're using the information from the question that was given to you. And although it mentions rub-acer, it does so in the context of car wheels with tyres made from rub-acer, which were found to be less prone to punctures. It specifically stated that it had no impact on speed or efficiency. So why would the person skilled in the art use D2 in combination? Therefore, they would not have been motivated to combine them together. And then finally, place the prior art plus the remaining document, which is D4. You acknowledge that it's in the same technical field with the person, but it wouldn't turn to it because it deals with a completely different problem, skid marks. And although it discloses rub-ace 1 and rub good, it specifically teaches that they slow the bicycle down. So why would you? So it teaches that the rubbers of rub-ace have a negative impact on efficiency and speed, and it doesn't mention rub-acer. So all of this together, you might think that an inventive step is what's close prior, what's the difference, what's the objective technical problem. It is so much more complex, and that's why we teach this complex inventive step argument to give you the best chance of passing paper B. In terms of how long to do this paper, it's a very complex paper, as I said, but it's doable. So spend 90 minutes on the analytics piece in order to get yourself to identifying the subject matter to be claimed, 30 minutes to draft the independent claims, 15 to draft the dependent claims, and then give yourself an hour to draft the letter to the EPO. Time will be tight, which is why it's so important to practice these papers. And I'll talk to you about what schedule you might be able to use in order to achieve that. Well, which one we use. Final thoughts on this paper, these papers. Whatever you do in terms of analytical techniques for paper A should be applicable for paper B. That's certainly the way that we do it, but you've got to recognize the complexity for paper B because of how much you have to do to amend the claims, give all the basis for your claims, argue novelty, argue inventive step. And you've seen now a tiny flavor of how complex the arguments are for amendments, novelty, and especially inventive step. And we, when we teach paper B, we sort of make sure that anybody that does paper B with us is also completely familiar with the techniques from the paper A session as well. Of course we do. That's the structure of how we do it. So a suggested schedule of where you can sort of prepare for these exams. Well, look, at the end of the day, these are technique papers. I would say, we're doing a preparation series on all the papers A, B, C, and D. I think C is more complex than A and B, so you need to give that a bit more time. And D is very book learning heavy, so you need to give yourself plenty of time to study for paper D, as we will talk about when we do the paper D session next week. But you've got to give yourself enough time. So the way that we do it, just the way things work for EQE training, is that we start teaching in November. And in the run up to November and December, we teach the extract, the subtract, and the execute, all those pieces together. And then in January to February, we sort of do the application and perfection. So we repeat these on actual past papers. And then once you've got to February, you should be in a position to sort of be confident and at least independent. Basically, by the time you finish with us, you should be ready to pass the exams. But you use that period from February to the exams to polish. So that's kind of November to December, 2 months of like real focused work to get your technique locked and practice. And then January to February, you apply that and perfect it on further past papers. Sounds simple. This is how we actually do it in practice. So let me just share this in this presentation with you. So what we do is we start at the very beginning of November with the introductory tutorial. Then we teach the technique for paper A. Then we apply that same technique to a past paper, the 2017 paper on dishwasher tablets. So you learn the technique one day, you apply the technique the next day to the paper. Then we actually all sit down together and we review the answers to that paper. Once you've done that, we teach you the techniques in principle with the example. We show you how to apply them to exam. By the time you get to that stage, you are ready enough with our help to actually attempt a paper yourself, because there's no point just sitting down and being taught things. You need to do them. So there's a further opportunity to attempt another paper A more independently, and then we all come back together and review that. So we've got 2 technique tutorials moving into the paper review tutorials, and we do the same thing for paper B. Paper B exam technique, apply that technique to a paper, give the opportunity to attempt the paper, go through that paper again, show how the technique worked. And then the second paper, again, the 2013 paper, you go away, you attempt it, we sit down and review that all together again. That's what we call training package 1. That's anybody that joins us does that, but you can also join training package 2, which is all of that. Plus we go into after the festive break, we look at another pair of papers from paper A. We have an actual mock exam weekend where we attempt paper A once on a Saturday, paper B on a Sunday. So it allows you to get to that stage now where you're really honing your techniques. You actually can do those papers under the WiseFlow electronic exam system to make sure that's all working for you. That's the start of February. And then we have further reviews of those papers as well to make sure you're sort of doing a final honing and review of the techniques. So that part, the part after the festive break is available for people doing training package 2. And then if you join us for training package 3, then we mark everything. So every time you attempt an exam, we mark it. And you can see how you're doing. And you can see where you're losing marks. And you can see where you need to sort of improve and strengthen your techniques. And that all sort of chunks down as follows. So this is actually the structure. I showed you kind of a side-by-side view, but this is how our training program works in a chronological way. And you can see on the right-hand side where we're expecting you to do work yourself, take it off, attempt the papers. And in purple, the training package 3, people will be handing in their papers and getting their answers back. So that is just everything in a nutshell. If you want to see more information on that kind of course structure, that timetable, then have a look at our timetable for when. Have a look at the course content for sort of the things that you could try at home or you could learn with us as well. So there's the links to the timetables, the course content are there. As I said, absolutely essential that you give yourself time to practice the papers and make sure that you do it under exam conditions. So whether you do it with us or independently or anybody else, definitely give yourself the opportunity to sit down and do exams under genuine mock exam conditions. If you need anything, if you've got any questions arising from this, if you want to see more about what we do, then all the links are there. If you want to book with us, then the link is there. But just reach out to us on LinkedIn if you've got any questions, or via the contact on the website, and we can give you all of our talk to you about any problems you might have or questions you might have, and hints and tips. And as we say to anybody that joins us on our courses, we're here for you now and up to the exams, but we recognize that these are really difficult. So they're challenging exams. We want to support you. It gives us so much energy. I'll be joined by other tutors in these later seminars. So everybody in the profession is there to kind of give you the best shot you can, and help you on this challenging journey. So I'll wrap up there. I mean, we've run over by 4 minutes, so apologies for that. I genuinely hope this has been useful for you all. Please do reach out if you have any questions. Take a look at the website if you need more information. Reach out to us via LinkedIn if you need to continue the conversation. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. If you're interested in learning about the steps you can take to prepare for paper C, then the seminar for that one is on Friday. We'll deal with paper B Monday next week, and then less likely for the people on this call, but the foundation exam, if you've got colleagues or contacts who might be sitting the foundation exam this year or beyond, then that seminar will be on Wednesday next week as well. Thank you once more for your attention. I will conclude our session now. And if you need anything, then take a look at our website or take a look at our pages on LinkedIn. But for now, enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you for joining. If you need anything, you know where we are. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.